Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is AJ Parr, and he's a friend of mine. He helped me make some NDE films a while back, and little experience for me to learn to do that. But well, he did all the work. But AJ wrote a book about children's near-death experiences, and he's been working with Dr. Melvin Morse on his research on mediumship. And now you've written several books, right, AJ?
Yes, I've written several books on NDEs. I've written two, and I've written over 20 books on spirituality, on comparative study of religions. But recently, I'm into NDEs, and I'm so proud because you were part of the 12 childhood near-death experiencers that I interviewed for my latest book, The Girl Who Visited Heaven. Now, some people ask me, who is that
Yeah.
girl who visited heaven? And it's Crystal Merlock. She was the protagonist of the first scientifically studied case of a childhood near-death experiencer. And she was studied by Dr. Melvin Morse, who is the pioneer researcher on childhood NDEs. You've had him several times in your show. But yes, in 1984, Crystal Merslock drowned in a swimming pool. And back then, Dr. Morse was relatively young. He was in his late 20s, and he was called to resuscitate her. Back then, this was a new technology. So he managed to resuscitate her, but she did not recover. She did not regain consciousness, and she remained in coma for the following 3 days. Dr. Morse thought she would die, so they sent her off to a bigger hospital. And a week later, he went to his job. He went to the hospital where he worked, and he saw Crystal, and he was really surprised because this girl had been over 20 minutes without oxygen. She clinically dead, and everybody thought that she would die, and that if she recovered, that she would have brain damage. However, when he saw her, she looked all right. She was with her mother. So he walked up to her and said, "Look, Crystal, I know you don't remember me, but I remember you." And Crystal turned to her mother, and said, "Mom, that's the doctor with the beard. The first one that treated me had no beard, but this is the guy who had the beard." And Dr. Morse was really impressed because apparently Crystal had been gone and never recovered consciousness. So Dr. Morse asked Crystal, "What do you remember about being in the swimming pool?" He wanted to know the reasons. He didn't know why she had drowned. So his basic interest was to learn why she had drowned. And she said, "You mean when I met Jesus and the Heavenly Father?"
Mm.
And he was really shocked because, first of all, he back then he did not believe in these things. He was agnostic, basically an atheist, and he was a scientist, basically, because scientists uh, don't get into spirituality and religion that often. So he was basically a scientist, and he was surprised, and he told her mother that he wanted to talk to her to find out what had happened. So he met with Crystal during the following weeks, and she told her that she was pushed into the swimming pool by some older kids that were playing around the pool, and that she didn't know how to swim that well, and that she drowned. But when she drowned and everything turned black, she saw a tunnel and a light at the end of the tunnel. And this woman that introduced herself as Elizabeth came walking towards her and helped her walk towards the light. Once she reached the light, she appeared in what seemed to be like a meadow with people wearing white robes. Now, this was in 1984. Dr. Raymond Moody's book had been out for less than 10 years, and not many people knew about near-death experiences. So, but her description matches what we've all heard, a meadow, people dressed in black. So when she got there, she saw some dead relatives and she saw Jesus. So Jesus told her it was not her time, that she had to go back. She said she also met the Heavenly Father. Now, I interviewed both Dr. Melvin Morse and Crystal Merlock, and I asked Crystal, what did the Heavenly Father look like? And he said, well, he looked like a very old man with white hair and a long white beard. And they told her that she had to go back, but that she would be able to return if she behaved.
Mhm.
And she didn't want to go back because she said she liked it there. And she met two girls that were playing in heaven, and she played with them, and they told her that they were waiting for that they had that they had died, and they were waiting for the next level. So she understood that she was dead, but she felt that she wanted to stay there. But since Jesus told her that she needed to go back and she refused, Jesus then said, but what about your mother? Don't you think she's gonna miss you? And Crystal said that as soon as she thought about her mother, she appeared back in her body. So this is also something that a lot of near-death experiencers mention, as soon as they think about a loved one or someone they left behind, they return to their body. So, of course, Dr. Morse didn't believe in this, she thought it was a conditioned response, and then he thought that maybe Crystal's family was, overly religious, and that they had told her about this, or maybe that they knew about near-death experiences. So he went to talk to her Crystal's mother, but no, this was a family that was not religiously oriented. They didn't go to church. They had no influence or no, she was not, they were not religious, okay? So this surprised Melvin, and then he started considering the possibility that this could have been due to the lack of oxygen, because people back then were saying that this could be that these experiences were caused by lack of oxygen, and also due to drugs, the drugs used in the hospitals, okay? So trying to find an answer, he spoke with Dr. Bruce Grayson, who back then was already one of the pioneer researchers, NDE researchers, and also with Dr. Raymond Moody, who actually both of them became his mentors. And they helped him set up what was known as the Seattle Study, which was the first scientific research on near-death experiences, not only childhood near-death experiences, but all near-death. It included children who had survived cardiac arrest. Okay, this was done in the Seattle Children's Hospital. So he managed to interview dozens of kids who had suffered cardiac arrest and profound comas, and he found that a certain percentage of them had near-death experiences. Now, he didn't go over and ask them, look, did you have a near-death experience? No, he presented himself as a researcher who wanted to know about the conditions in the hospital and what their experiences had been while they were hospitalized. So he got several responses that really blew his mind. Like, for example, I saw several had seen Jesus, several had been in heaven, and one of them, after he was revived, said, "That was weird. You guys just sucked me back into my body." So this started changing him, okay? So he found that 50% of the children made some sort of decisions to return to the body, or they were given the opportunity to go back. While in adults, this is only the 20% of the people go through this experience. 70% of the children had visions of leaving their bodies and traveling to other realms. Some even had mentioned having a life review. So since he got acquainted with Dr. Raymond Moody's studies, basically contained in his book Life After Life, he knew about the commonalities. So he found that most of the kids shared common elements that had been mentioned by Raymond Moody. So this, after or during this study, he started to believe. First of all, he had a control group of kids who had gone through comas or had been taking drugs or had been had suffered from lack of oxygen, and none of these kids mentioned having similar experiences. So he ruled out the possibility of these experiences being caused by lack of oxygen or drugs. That was one of the main findings of the Seattle study. And the other consequence is that he became a believer. He said, wow, this proves that there is something beyond life, and that consciousness doesn't necessarily depend on the brain or the human body. So
Yeah, it's outside it.
After that, he really got into researching human consciousness and also NDEs. But the thing that happened is that when he published a first article in 1985, and he became famous overnight. So during the following years, he was invited to the main TV shows like Oprah, and he was in the Tonight Show and Larry King, and he took Crystal. Crystal was 7 years old when she had her experience, but when she was a teenager, she was, really famous. She was on TV and she appeared in different magazines. And a lot of people heard about near-death experiences for the first time thanks to them. His book, he wrote a book with Paul Perry that became a New York Times bestseller. And I understand that you watched Crystal when she was in Oprah.
I did. My second NDE was 1986 from the dual pregnancy, and months had went by, and I had just shoved it away. I didn't talk about it. I didn't have words for it. I didn't think it ever happened to anybody else. And I was walking through to make dinner one night, and I stopped near the TV, and Oprah was new at the time, and Crystal was on there, and there was some other guys on there. They were all like teenage age, and I stood back from my TV. I just listened to it for a couple minutes and I said, oh my God, how ridiculous. How stupid do they think people are? Oh my God. Because I have a sister that's a compulsive liar. My mom says she started lying when she learned how to talk. And so I grew up with this liar my whole life. And I just hated lies because I was always hurt by her lies. I was the victim of her lies. I hated liars. And oh my God, liars. And I took a step back to go start dinner. And all of a sudden, it's like something just stopped me in my tracks, like this invisible brick wall. And it was the strangest thing because I had this dialogue going on very loud in my head. It was weird. And I'm like, oh my God, what liars? And then I stepped back and I was like, oh my God, it was real. What happened to me in the wheelchair in the emergency room when I lost the twinge? That was real. And then this voice is saying, it was not, it couldn't have been. But it was real. It couldn't have been. And then that nasty, whatever voice that was like trying to prevent me from believing this, I pushed it aside and like, no, that was real. And I thought after dinner, when my husband gets home from work, I'm going to sit him down at the table. And that's what I did. And I told him, I sent the boys to the room. I said, I need to talk to your dad in a minute. Close the door. And I sat him down. It's very serious. And I said, I have something to tell you. And I told him what happened. I didn't catch the word of it, near death experience, but I still thought those people were weirdos and liars, mind you. But mine come back. And couldn't tell you what they said about theirs or anything. It just didn't stick in my memory. It was just mine experience. And I told him, and I was shaking all over because I was remembering it so well. I was remembering how cold I was when I first come back to the wheelchair after the NDE. And I just shook all over. And then I looked at him thinking, he's going to put me in a psych ward, take the kids and divorce me. And so I'm looking at his response, but I had to tell. And he looked at me for a minute and he said, I know how it sounds, but I know you. I know you're telling me the truth. And then he proceeded to tell me something he'd never told me before. And we didn't ever talk about it after. Is he said when he was grown up, he was from a big Catholic family, 12 kids. And I think boys is all crowded in one room, the girls in another. And the upstairs of the house, this is before that house burnt down. But he said he would see an old man walking with a wooden leg upstairs. And everybody said, oh, you do not. And he says, by God, I saw it. He says, nobody believed me. He says, so I believe you. He understood what it was like to have something happen so strange. And it happens and people don't believe you. He says, I believe you. And it was just dropped. I thought, I want to know what that was called because I want to go to the library and look it up, but I didn't know what it was even called. So I just, for the longest time, I tried telling a couple more people after that, my sister and my husband's best friend, and they just kind of looked at me like I was weird. And so I just dropped it there for many, many years. But yeah, Crystal was the first one that she is what made my memory come back of it. And I
Yeah,
didn't
well,
remember that
yeah,
hers was drowning. And I had remembered my drowning a couple months after the NDE. So this was a few months even after that. And so, I didn't connect to the drowning or any of that. I didn't make any of them connections at all. It was a long time later before I started realizing, probably, when we got the internet and started hearing more about NDEs. And I thought, were both those NDEs? Because mine just seems so different than everybody else's. And it takes a long time to wrap your head around it when you're not given the information. So,
right. Well, that's why I interviewed you for this book. This book, I practically interviewed 12 people who had had childhood near-death experiences. And I did this after interviewing Crystal. And also, I had interviewed two or three people who had had childhood NDEs, and motivated by Dr. Melvin Morse, with who I started working, I started paying more attention to this phenomenon. I also had the chance to interview PMH Atwater, who really specialized in these phenomena, and she specialized in kids, in young kids. Most of her conclusions were based on the study of kids who were 5 or younger. Uh, However, she did study kids of all ages, and she determined that most of these kids see angels like you did.
Mhm,
They actually they leave their bodies
mhm.
and see things from above like you did and like many other kids do.
Are they more out of
Uh,
body than the heaven experiencing children? Because mine
well,
was just out
yeah,
of
she
body
says
in
that,
my drowning.
right. She says that it's more common for kids to leave their bodies in emergency situations like near drowning or like even when they are being abused or attacked,
Okay.
they may leave their bodies, and that there is a self-defense mechanism
You
for
know
kids not
that people
to
say
suffer.
that, but I think personally, I think it got that God rescues us,
Right. God doesn't want kids to suffer.
right?
So
I think
they
He
take them,
rescues us and gets
yes,
us
they
out of
take them
there.
out of the body.
Hmm.
I agree. Also, what happens with kids is that it takes them years or decades to
Yeah,
understand, first of all, what had happened and to discover that this is a near death experience. So they think for most of their lives that this is like a dream they had. They don't really know how to define it.
right.
But adults also take years to understand once they have a near-death experience to integrate them. Takes them years. But for kids, it takes them decades,
Yeah,
even 30 or 40 years.
yeah,
So this is something that PMH Atwater studied and determined. She says that while adults may spend from 5 to 10 years to understand what happened. In kids, it may take from 20 to 40 years to integrate their experiences. In your case, it took more or less that long,
yeah,
right?
it did. It took a long time because I didn't have the words to
Right. Imagine a kid
form it.
doesn't have the vocabulary.
All I knew was it was memories, and I'd push it away because it was weird.
Right. So another percentage that PMH Atwater is that nearly 70% of childhood near-death experiencers claims to have seen angels. You also saw an angel,
Yes, I
so.
did. Hmm.
And another thing is that kids are more likely to see deceased pets as well
Huh.
as dead relatives.
Huh.
So that's really interesting. And she also found that a certain percentage of kids from 1 to 5 would remember their birth. Now, this is uh, something really impressive because they actually described the place where they were born or the circumstances. So this is, she even says she found kids that could remember being in the womb. She mentioned this girl called Penny, and that she says that she hated when her mother smoked
Oh.
because she remembers feeling anxious and feeling the bad taste
Oh.
and the bad sensation every time she smoked.
Oh.
So that is something really impressive. Another thing that she found is that 85% of these kids came back with higher intelligence. Some of them could learn to read or write at a very early age, or could solve mathematical problems. And the negative side effect that she found is that most of these kids wanted to go back. They did not like being here, and they remembered that they were better off
I was
there
headed
because
back
that,
to the pond when I come to
yeah,
my family. I was head back to the pond.
Yeah, I remember that you said that you wanted to go back drowning, you wanted to go back to the afterlife. So this is really interesting what she found. PMH Atwater is together with Melvin Morse, the pioneer researchers. So I basically focused on 12 near-death experiencers that I personally interviewed. Most of these were 5 years old or younger. For example, Ingrid Honkala was 2 years old when she had her near-death experiences. Jacob Cooper was only 3.
Hmm.
Dr. Brian Sackett was 3 years old. Mark Anthony, the psychic medium, was age 4.
Oh.
Tamara Calder Richardson was age 5. You were age 5
Uh-huh.
when you had your experience. Dr. Yvonne Kaysen was age 5. Lorelei Drake was age 7. Anthony Cipoletti was age 7. Reverend Bill McDonald was age 8. And Sharon Sananda Kumara was 9 years old. And these kids shared common elements. And one of the things that Dr. PMH Atwater concluded is that these kids who are beginning their lives have had basically no conditioning. Most of these kids, especially those who are 5 years old or younger, they have had basically no religious education. However, they do mention these same common elements.
A lot of people don't know it, but Lee Whitting, that has NDE radio, he drowned. I believe it was 5 years old.
Oh, yeah?
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people who have had these childhood near-death experiences are completely transformed after this, or they become like you did. You're into NDEs. Others become they for example, Ingrid Honkala, she was age 2 when she had her near-death experience. By the time she was 3, she knew how to read and write.
Mhm.
And then she became a very intelligent student. She ended up working in NASA. So
Wow.
they are literally transformed.
I didn't
Uh,
realize that about Ingrid, that she worked at NASA.
yeah, she had worked. She graduated in oceanography, and then she worked at NASA. And
Cool.
today she is, really a really successful human being.
She's such a sweetheart too.
Yes, she's one of the well, she's the youngest childhood near-death experiencer I could find. Although there are some who claim to have died at the moment of death, of birth. They have died at the moment of birth, but that's really hard to to consider, as something real. However, I also studied I and interviewed other researchers and asked them about this phenomenon. I interviewed Dr. Pim van Lommel, who has also been researching since the 80s practically, and Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, who coined the term spiritually transformative experiences. I talked to Jody Long, who together with Jeffrey Long is in charge of the Near Death Research Foundation, and Paul Perry, who wrote most of the books together with Dr. Raymond Moody. And I also interviewed Dr. Raymond Moody. Dr. Raymond Moody uh, also wrote the foreword of this book.
I just love him
He,
so much. He's so sweet.
yes, he is. He is together with Melvin Morse, the two
They're
researchers
adorable.
I
They're
like the
just
most.
absolutely adorable. Yeah. I get really
Yeah.
attached to my guests.
Huh?
I get attached to my guests. Like I know it's on the computer and it's only like an hour or two, but a lot of my guests I just get so attached to, like my foster kids or something. The mother in
I
me.
think I think I think Dr. Raymond Moody was literally transformed after hearing about all these experiences, and I consider him. It's not that he has no ego, but he almost has no ego.
I
He is
know he's
such
humble.
a nice person and a
Yeah.
loving person, and the same I can say about Dr. Melvin Morse.
Yes.
They have become so loving.
Yeah. You would
They
think
are
they'd be full of ego and arrogance, and they're
right,
not at all. Very
right.
personable.
So the book is basically focused on these 12 childhood near-death experiences, and I consider that the importance of these cases is precisely that it shows us that not necessarily what people mention in their near-death experiences is due to conditioning or to culture or to what you've learned from religion. There is something way deeper. For example, the tunnel, the light leaving your body, being able to watch things from above. Those things recurringly happen. And although every near death experience is different, they do share these common elements.
I've heard people say it's
And I
not a,
believe that,
go ahead.
excuse me. Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard people say that heaven isn't a physical place, and I disagree. I disagree because we've all, not all, but a lot of us have been in that tunnel. We've all been in the throne room. You know, a lot of people have been in the meadows, and the scenery they describe is similar. And I think it is an actual place. I mean, I think God and Jesus are actual beings. You know, I don't think they're just created out of our, like What Dreams May Come movie, where everything just is created out of our imaginations. And I just, and when we're told it's not your time, or it is your time, or, I was told it was my time, which not many people are. I was told, because I was screaming to go back, no, it's your time. there's there's someone that knows when our time is and when it is not. And when you're sent
Right.
back after being told, no, it's your time, it has left, that's the biggest imprint left on me, is that it was my time. I felt like I defied the laws of nature. The moment my butt was back in that wheelchair,
Yeah, you had to beg in order to return.
I begged, yes. And I felt like I felt like I was given a child given their way. I was told
Yeah,
no, they give
I
my
also
way.
believe I also believe it's a physical place, but it's in another dimension. So it's really hard to describe it. And also when you bring back your memories, you remember it from the 3D point of view. But when you're there, you're not in 3D.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But it seems like
there are many
Earth
things
is
like people say the
the other
color
dimension.
there. Huh?
It seems to me like Earth is the other dimension and not there. Like there
Oh
is
yeah, okay.
the place,
Right.
this is the other dimension. Because when you're a kid and you drown and then suddenly you're hovering over the pond, you don't feel like I'm in another dimension. You can tell there's an obvious separation here. They cannot see me floating in the air. I can see them. I can tell what they're doing. I could not hear anything of earth. I heard no birds chirping. I couldn't hear the water splashing. My brothers swim. I couldn't hear my mom and sister talking. I felt their emotions. Um, I felt I was
You also
inside
heard
their
their thoughts,
emotions,
right?
but not, I was in their thoughts, but not in their language. I heard nothing from earth.
Yeah, that's also something that they mentioned that they heard the thoughts of other people when they left their bodies. This is something recurring also in kids. For example, you experienced it, Lorelei Drake experienced it, Ingrid experienced it, and this more or less proves that it is a real phenomenon.
Mm.
Although we may not understand it, but it's real. It's something that happens in another dimension, or maybe this is the other dimension, but it happens as something real. And there are some events, like when you're told that you have to go back or that you have to stay, that prove that there's something going on. For example, Jody Long mentioned the case about this kid who went out with his father. They went to dinner and they had a car accident. So they were both taken to the ER, and while the kid was dead for a few minutes, he says he went to heaven and he saw Jesus. And Jesus told him that he had to go back, but he didn't want to go back. So Jesus called the kid's father, who was also there. And the father told him, look, you have to go back, take care of your brother, but I have to stay. I need to stay. But I asked Jesus, and you will go back. So the kid, when as soon as he heard this, he woke up in the hospital bed. And when they came to tell him that his father had died, he already knew. His father had told him that he had died. So these are things that more or less prove that there's something going on, like a twilight zone or
It was
whatever
like
you want to
that.
call it, but it's real.
That was like that in Jeffrey Olson's experience in E2. His wife died in the car wreck, and so did their baby boy, but their little boy that was sitting behind him, he was okay. But the wife and and Jeffrey Olson, he went to heaven. He saw his wife. She's beautiful and perfect, not like she was in the car, mangled. And she said, "You got to go back, because Spencer, the little boy in the back seat, he'll be left an orphan if he didn't go back. You got to go back." Yeah.
Wow.
And I
Interesting.
I met Spencer. I went to hear Jeffrey Olson speak and some others. Something Jeffrey put on in Sedona a few years back. And I went over to Spencer and I said, I feel led that I feel your mom, and I want you to know that this everything about your dad that he's doing, it's not about your dad, it's about you. It's about a mother's love that she sent him back to take care of you. This is all about you, Spencer. And I felt her in me. And he said, "Can I hug you?" We hugged. I felt that woman so close to me, just wanting him to know that she did this for him. And so it wasn't about her dad, his dad. And he said, I knew that. He said, but I forgot it. And thank you for reminding me. But yeah, I was like, told my husband, I said, I gotta go talk to Spencer. I just
There
caught
are
me
other
on
things.
something.
Another commonality found in both adults and kids is that they are shown glimpses of the future. What would happen if they don't go back, and what would happen if they go back? And this was, for example, um, in your case, you were shown in your adult NDE, right? What would happen
Yes,
if you didn't go
yes,
back?
yes. The
But
immediate future. My son's upset. And that's very confusing too, to not made me want to not tell, because how could that be true? How could have I seen a future that didn't happen? How could I tell
right,
anybody? That's not even believable.
right.
You know?
Now, in the case of Jacob Cooper, who was 3 years old when he suffocated, he was shown his life in the future, and that he would be talking to people in masses, that he would be helping people, and he became a hypnotherapist and a past life regressionist, and he's helping people. And
He's
a
like
lot
a
of
little
people,
brother to me, Jacob
oh
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's really nice. He's very young too, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I met him when we were on an NDE panel in Colorado in like 2017. And I think it's both for both of us speaking. And we had both we didn't know that's where we met each other. I had went down to look at the stage the night before to get used to it, but staying on the stage because I was like nervous, and he had done the same thing. And
Oh,
so then was next day was on the NDE panel together, and we just clicked. Me and Jacob did. Yep. We're friends to this day.
another one who is mentioned in the book, Reverend Bill McDonald. He
Yes.
had pneumonia when he was 8 years old, and he died. And he was shown glimpses of the next 50 years of his life. He
Really?
saw himself, yeah, he saw himself in the Vietnam War. Well, he says he was in a helicopter, that he was in a war, and he later went to Vietnam. He also he said he saw the assassination of President Kennedy before it happened, when he was 8 years old, and that he knew a president would be shot. And he knew things about the future. And also, when he was in Vietnam, he knew who was going to die. He could see, if he saw a helicopter taking off, he would say that helicopter is not going to come back.
See,
And
I've interviewed him. I can't remember very many people's stories. Like I've interviewed all these people. Somebody say, "What was their NDE?" Like I couldn't tell you most of them. Like Jeffrey Olson's, I read his book, so it really stands out. But yeah, I just don't remember. You're like fortunate that you can just spit out,
well, you can interview
experiences.
him once again.
Huh?
You can interview him once again.
Oh, I'm not doing many interviews anymore, but
Okay. But that's something interesting. People are shown the future. People are told if they need to go back or not. Uh, all these kids, when they return, they come back transformed, and those who meet Jesus become more spiritual, and they. It's one thing to believe in Jesus because you read about him, but it's another to have actually met him.
well, Jacob is Jewish.
Uh-huh.
Hmm? Yeah.
There are some cases of Jewish people who actually see Jesus also. And another phenomena is that people, kids, when they are around electrical equipment, they cause some
We can't wear watches.
interaction. That happens to you too?
Yeah, cannot wear a watch. I've
Okay.
tried so many different times. I give up. They don't, the battery just goes out in no time. So
You see? So these are things that more or less prove that these are real phenomena. I have no doubt. And those of you who are watching this and they maybe could be afraid of death, or maybe a loved one recently died and they're wondering, is there something after death? All these things prove to us that life goes on. All these things, more than, studying this because I like the subject or the topic, this has given me a better understanding of what life is and what death is. Death is only a transition, and we have to give a spiritual meaning to our lives. We have to stop thinking that this material world is the only thing that exists. We need to believe in values. We need to believe in love, unconditional love, because that's basically the main lesson that people bring back from NDEs, that we are here to learn lessons of love.
yeah. And that doesn't mean, like me, I of course know heaven's real, but it doesn't mean if you lose someone you love that it's not going to be the most devastating thing in your life, because we want them with us.
Right.
Especially these poor people who lose these children, I can't imagine, to lose a child. I mean, I had dual pregnancies and miscarriages, but like my son Jeremy almost drowns. Like, God, I can't. You don't give us more than we can handle. I can't. I don't have to put in a psych ward. I couldn't have lived with the loss of a child.
Right. What we need to remember that when they are about to die, they are taken out from their bodies. They do not, apparently, they do not get to experience death.
Right.
Before their body dies, they are taken out
Right.
and they
Well, and that's great
experience.
for them. I'm talking about the ones left behind. You
Yeah,
know
right.
what I
The
mean?
ones that are left behind, it's not that I don't fear death. I fear suffering when
Yeah.
I die. For example, I don't if I die during my sleep, okay, that would be great. But I wouldn't like to die slowly, in a car accident, nobody comes to help and you spend there 2 days before they find you.
Yeah.
Or,
And more than fearing my own suffering, I fear a loved one's suffering. Like to have to watch a loved one suffer is a huge
right.
fear of mine. Like I would rather suffer myself than see a loved one suffer.
Yes. So what we fear about death is mostly suffering.
Mhm.
And we also miss, I remember when my father died like 2 years ago. And I knew or I already knew all this, but I cried. I missed him. I still miss him. But I think that he is in a better place. So that gives me some comfort. Doesn't mean that I did not suffer, but the world of NDEs helps us face death in a better way,
Or mortality.
right? Because death does not is not really the end, and there is a spiritual world. God exists, Jesus exists, the angels exist, heaven exists, and that's something that, although we cannot prove it scientifically, NDEs are the closest thing we have to prove it.
How do you see the future, or where do you see NDE study research going? Because it seems to me like we got to get past the stories at some point. Yeah, we've heard them and heard them, it exists. So how do we study that realm? How do we go further in this scientifically? Or do you think it
Well,
can be proven or studied?
okay, together with NDEs, there's also the study of shared death experiences, where this is when someone dies and someone who is near or not necessarily near goes through the death experience of the other person. There's also mediumship. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I recently participated with Dr. Melvin Morse in a scientific study of mediumship in which we interviewed 19 mediums. And although we cannot say that we proved that these communications are 100% real, we did find commonalities. So I think that in the future, the more we study these phenomena, the more we will understand it. And there's another thing that's happening, that more and more people who are dying are being resuscitated or revived. There are more methods, and the technology is getting better. So, for example, uh, someone who dies can be resuscitated half an hour after he dies, and some of these people come back with no brain damage. So,
Yeah,
uh,
NDErs tend to have a miraculous healing.
yes, that's another thing that I've noticed interviewing near-death experiencers, that some people who have cancer, when they come back, they have healed. Like Anita Murjani
Mhm.
is the most known example, and Dr. Evan Alexander, who had uh,
Yeah.
a lethal disease, uh, meningitis, a lethal form of meningitis. He recovered quickly, and he was said to have he would have brain damage. And a lot of people who are dead for more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they should suffer brain damage, but they don't. So,
Yeah, like with drowning. Like, I posted on my channel tape recording of my mom. I had called her and I said, Mom, what do you remember about my drowning? And she
oh,
died a year ago, but it was a few years before that. And she talked about it and she did. So I just wanted people to hear, that I did have a witness that, my mother's is, well, what about it? And I said, how old was I? She said 5. And I didn't hear her until I played it back later because first I didn't hear it. I said, oh, I thought maybe I was 5. The only thing we disagreed on when she added information I didn't know, but was I said, well, what did I look like? My brother carried me over his shoulder. She said, what do you mean? What did you look like? I said, was I dead? No, why'd you say that? I explained why I said that, right? But so she didn't, how did she not know carrying this girl that wasn't breathing, been underwater for a long time, she couldn't find, and had my brother keep going under and dive until he found me? And he's carrying me and I'm not breathing. Why didn't that click? I was dead. But yet, when he said, Mom, when I threw up his water down his back when I'm coming to, Mom, can I put her down now? I remember that, but she admits I remember it better than she did. But yeah, I put that on there. One thing I got wondering here this week is I saw some YouTubes on MRIs they're doing that takes pictures of your dreams.
oh yeah, I've never seen that.
And another one I saw where um, people that are completely paraplegic, they insert something in their brain, and Elon Musk is ahead of that. And they can look at the computer screen, I mean, no hands, nothing, and telepathically tell the mouse where to move. And they sit there
Yes,
and play
I've seen
games on the
that.
computer.
Yes,
So
that's
I'm
really
wondering if those two things will be able to make us show vividly our memories of our NDE.
that would be really interesting if they can take pictures of memories. I've never heard that done, and I don't know if I can believe that dreams can be
They're
photographed or
taking
video.
pictures. They're not perfect. They got a way to go. It's a new
Wow.
technology, but they're taking snapshots of the images. And I can't explain to you technically, but look it up on, I'll send you some
All
links.
I know is that in the past we only had black and white movies, and then black and white TV, and right now we could have it could be the equivalent of the beginning of that technology. For example, I know what Elon Musk is doing, but whatever he's doing, it's the equivalent of black and white TV. When that turns into color TV and internet and all that, when that evolves in 100 years or in 50 years or in 20 years, there's going to be a lot of new advancements
I had
in this
said
field.
before when I first started my channel, I remember talking to somebody about all this stuff, and I talked about, my drowning, this vision opened up and it was a memory, but it was like it was real. And then, my second NDE, this vision opened up like it was real. This boy in this store throwing a fit, demanding what he wants right now. And I felt like that was God's way of showing me how I was acting. And I remember saying, we don't have that kind of technology. And people tend to think of the Bible as, oh, that's so long ago. And I was like, they don't realize how futuristic it is in heaven because we don't have that technology now. And I started seeing this about the MRIs, take pictures of dreams, and then the telepathic communication. And I thought, we may get there where I want you to see my NDE and I could just somehow telepathically send that to you. What's in my mind? and you can see my memory. Wouldn't that be so cool? If, we're talking about our
Well,
NDEs, we're trying to describe, it's hard to describe. If we have in the future where I was like, okay, I'm sending you that now. And like, oh,
it would
wow.
be one way of telling the scammers from those who are telling the
Yes.
truth.
Yes.
Because I believe that there are a lot of people showing up today that say, "No, look, I had a near-death experience," and they probably, some of them, don't look like they're telling the truth. You
That's
know,
why I don't interview very much anymore, is because the new one's out. I go looking for people like I used to, and nope, 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 nope. It's not anything I can believe.
right? I have the same problem too. However, there are some cases that are really mind-blowing and that do prove that this is something real. And
And I've been wrong
I'm
before too. I've like, I don't think so. And then I'll get talking to him or something will happen. I'm like, well, okay. And then I'll be like, I'm so glad I did that, because I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell, but
right.
sometimes I just like, and even yesterday someone asked to be on, and I'm like, I just don't think so. And they said, well, can I ask why not? And so I told them, and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, we'll do this. So, it might be just partly me where I'm just not, I don't know. As like I wanted everybody on. I want to give everybody a chance, and I got so many great guests. And then okay, I get really turned off with the UFO stuff and the ET stuff, and um some of the people that think they're a guru now, and they start like wanting to rewrite psychology or everything because of their NDE, or the ones that say, well, Jesus told me this and Jesus told me that, and they never said it in their NDE and past interviews, and they're doing it for political reasons, or whatever their agenda is, or and people are just gullible. Oh, because Jesus told them that, indeed they're believing everything. And what put the brakes on for me personally on my show is I had a guy, he's getting ready to come on, and the credentials was like, wow. 5 minutes and looking into his credentials online, and the guy didn't even have a bachelor's degree, and he's claimed to be like the world top psychiatrist overall psychiatry. And and I'll be honest, I report him to the medical review board, and they say he
Oh,
does not have a license. I report him to the police, and I report it to a journalist because there's pictures of him with the mayor of the city, and he's on all these news stations on Suicide Awareness Week and stuff. And the guy's a damn liar. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, I gotta step back here. Like all glitters isn't gold. I gotta, because if people trust me and I have this person on, so they trust him, and he's saying he can cure your psychological problems in 5 minutes if you call him and he takes your credit card, and he's telling people to go off their medicine. And I got looking into this and like, oh my gosh, this is such a responsibility, what I'm doing, and people trusting me. And I'm like, whoa, I gotta pull on the brakes here. I gotta
right.
slow way down. So this is what I'm doing. So
Oh, yeah, but you've been doing a great job. I remember when I started out my channel, you were already famous. Your channel was one of the first to succeed. And I remember you helped me a lot when I started out. You, thanks to you, I met several of the guests that I interviewed. And I think you've done great. I don't know what you should continue. And if you don't find new ones, re-interview the old ones.
yeah, I did that for a while. I re-interviewed some old ones for a while because I wasn't finding new ones. And we talked about my husband's health. And so I just have other things that I gotta do right now.
Right.
So my focus has to be, on my husband.
Okay.
So I like
Well,
doing this. I love it. I love it, love it. I love talking to you. I love doing this when I do it. And I've got another one I'm getting ready to schedule that I'm really excited about. But I got a couple of speaking events I'm gonna fly and speak and do some things. And Anthony Shin did my documentary. It'll be coming out soon.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
we're excited about that.
That's an honor.
Yeah. So I'm still in there. But don't count
Yeah,
me
I
out.
know. I know you are. You look great, by the way.
Thank you. So is there anything else you want to cover?
Well, those who want to find out more about my book, they can get it on in Amazon. It's available. The Girl Who Visited Heaven. I also wrote this other book, Stairway to Heaven, 25 near-death experiences about
Is that the one
encounters.
I'm in?
You're also in this book.
Oh, I'm in
You're in
both of
both.
them?
Yes, you're in
Oh,
both of
okay. Okay.
your childhood near-death experiences in this one.
Okay.
And the one in the wheelchair, your adult, I think it
Okay.
was your second NDE,
Yes.
is in my first book.
Okay.
And I think you're the only one that's in both of my books.
Okay. Well, I feel
But
honored.
both of these books can be found in Amazon. They are available in Kindle and paperback formats. The first one is also available in Audible as audiobook. And I'm preparing my new book in audiobook format. And I hadn't realized it, but yes, you've been featured in both of my
Did you
books.
make it to the US? No, you're in Venezuela, right?
I'm in Colombia. I'm from
Oh,
Venezuela, but I live in Colombia.
okay.
No, I haven't. I have next year. I will probably get my visa.
Okay, so you didn't come to IANDS conference yet?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay. I
I
thought you did.
didn't.
Okay.
Not yet. Maybe next year.
Okay. Now you do also do ISGO for IANDS? You have a group?
I am facilitating for them in
Okay.
the sharing groups.
I was one of the first ISGO facilitators to get like pass through, but I didn't start mine. I had 3 months of Sundays all lined up, Raymond Moody and all these people. And then I cut ties with IANDS, so I didn't do it with
Oh, okay.
ISGO. But when the COVID hit, then I started my own thing, so it worked out.
Great. Yeah, I was almost 2 years with Spiritual Awakenings International, the Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, and now I'm with IANDS. I love to get meet different people, get different experiences.
Oh, there's a lot of
And
IANDS people I love, and some I just clashed with in the beginning. They're gone now, but
yeah,
the
I
ones
hope
I've
to
had
be
issues
there
with are
at
gone.
the next IANDS conference. Let's see what happens.
Okay. So you're going to try to go to the next one? Where is it next year? Do you know?
I think it's Chicago. I'm not too sure,
Really?
but I'll try to make it. In
Okay.
any case, it'll be next year.
Okay. All
So
right.
thanks a lot, Peggy. I'm
Ah,
really glad
to
we
see
had
you.
this conversation.
Yeah. And I will put the links for your books in the description.
Okay,
So, okay. So good luck to
thank you.
you. Good luck on your channel. Oh, what's your channel called?
AJ Parr Spiritual Journalist.
It's on YouTube. You interview,
It's on
um,
YouTube. Yes,
you
I'll
do
include
what
the
I
link.
do.
I'll send you the link so you can
Okay.
include it.
Okay. You
Okay?
got some good people in there. Yeah. All right. Thanks, AJ.